What is up, everyone? In this video, we're going to talk about what are the main KPIs that you're going to hear me and my team consistently say. What are the main KPIs you got to keep track of? What are the most important metrics for you to scale your business and take it to the next level? So, if you're just starting off, we're going to really essentially focus on three, but I'm going to give you a few more just for you can kind of get some self awareness and see exactly what your numbers should look like. But essentially, when you're getting from zero all the way to 30, 40, hell, all the way to 100K plus, the main thing that we're tracking is cost per book call and cost to acquire a client. That's literally the main thing that we're looking at. And then once we get to cost to acquire a client, once we know our cost per acquisition, then it's mainly about that. Then everything you can throw it away because, like, let's say if your cost per message, which we're gonna get that in a second, but let's say your cost per message is $50, but you're still closing people at $1,000, then the math from back before the cost per acquisition, it just becomes irrelevant. But when you first started off, you need to keep these numbers in check because things get too expensive, and then they get way too expensive, then you're not gonna be profitable. That's why you gotta check the KPIs and be on top of it. Okay, so let's get right into it. So the first metric we're always gonna look at, well, actually I missed one. I'm so sorry. So the main one we're gonna look at is always the cost per message and or the cost per result. It's pretty much the same thing right here. Cost per message, cost per result. It's pretty much the same thing. Facebook, depending how you organize the columns, it might say result, it might say DM. Doesn't really matter. But the CPR or the CPDM, pretty much the cost per result or the cost um, per message, per direct message, it should be anywhere between $2.50 and the max $25, or maybe you can push it to $30 if you're charging 8 to 10 grand. But I would never go over $30. Okay. Sometimes, and this for very advanced stuff, if you're doing a retargeting campaign, right? And if you don't know what this is, we'll talk about it in further modules. But pretty much, if you're doing a retargeting campaigns that you're only targeting, let's say, the people who DM you, and there's not a big pool, there's not a big audience, right? It might be just 1,000 people there. Your cost per result may be $50, but that's because you're only advertising to only 100 people, which in that scenario it's okay. But when you're running a completely cold audience, pretty much a no interest based campaign or a Gary Vee or small business, whatever the interest may be, that you're running a campaign completely cold, people who never seen you before, the average cost per message should be anywhere between 250 at the lowest end, the lower the better, of course, to the higher end, $25. Okay, that should be your average cost per message, cost per result. Okay, then after that we go to CTR. CTR, we could keep it very simple. Anything above 1%, your money, like you're golden. Anything above percent, because the higher the percentage, the longer the lifespan of the ad it's gonna have, right? If you have a 3%, then you there's a very high potential the ad could run for the next 3 or 4 months. Okay, so that's why we want to have the higher CTR. Again, CTR is click through rate out of 100 people, how many people are clicking on the ad, and you want to have this above 1%. It is below 1%, your cost is gonna be out of whack, and that means that your ad, once you start cranking up the volume, is not gonna perform as well. So you have to have this in check. The better the CTR, the better the ad is going to perform, the longer the lifespan of the ad. So this is very important metric too. And how do we get better CTR? You got to come up with better hooks and better ads. So this is the correct correlation if your ad sucks or not. If you had a bad CTR, that means the ad is not good at all and it's not getting people's attention. The hook pretty much sucks. So this is a really good tell if the ads is working or not, the CTR. Okay. The next one is cost per book call. Okay, so cost per book call, we've seen as low as $50, as high as $400, sometimes even $500. But you should keep it around, honestly, the $200 to $250. That should be you should keep it in the middle of between 50 to 400. This is how you can be extremely profitable. And it's literally just math. Let's say if your cost per book calls is $100, we spend $100 to get 10 book calls. Pretty much just simple math like that. And that's why we need to know our cost per book call, because we already know how much it costs us to get people in front of us. So if our cost per book call is $100 and we want to speak to 10 people, then we know that we got to give our ads at least $1,000 so we could speak to 10 people. And then depending on your closing rate, and then it goes down from there. Okay. So average book call cost at low end, $50, at the highest end, $400. Okay. So that's cost per book call. The next metric, which is pretty much, like I said, the most important one, is your cost to acquire your client. Now, this is the most important one because once you get this number, everything else becomes irrelevant if the number is good. Meaning, if your cost per book call, let me back up a bit. If the price of the program is $5,000 or six, let's just say $5,000, right? And your cost to acquire a client is 4,500, then it's all at whack. It doesn't really make sense. But if your cost per to acquire a client is, let's say, 750 or even $1,000, it's money because you have $4,000 that you're profiting. So then any metrics before this, if your cost to acquire a client is actually $1,000 and you keep closing people at $1,000, then literally cost per message or cost per book call it doesn't really matter because you're closing people at $1,000 every single time, right? So it doesn't really matter. So but once you get to this point, it's because you have everything already locked down, you already have most of the things in order, and you already are moving predictably. Okay, so your average cost per book call, I seen at the lowest literally like $200, but honestly that's not too consistent. The lowest I ever see and pretty consistent has been $300 at a $4,000 to $5,000 price ticket. If you're charging 6 grand, 8 grand, 10 grand, then it goes into the $1,000 realm. Okay, so that's cost to acquire a client. Now, average cash on hand, your co. So cash on hand, this is how much money you take down. Now, a lot of beginners, which I totally understand, that I did the same thing. They like to take only $500 deposit or $1,000 deposit, which again, I totally get it. I did the same thing. I wasn't too confident in my sales skills, so I was taking low. They could tell me yes, but you don't become profitable. And again, it is okay if you're just starting off and you're not profitable that month. If you're breaking even, let's say if you spend 2K on ads, but you got 4 people to give you $500, so you're technically breaking even. That is honestly a very good sign because things are working. You just didn't get enough cash on hand, so now we're having a sales issue. But at least the marketing issue and the appointment setting issue or problems or bottlenecks are pretty much being solved because you are getting in sales. So now we just got to work on the sales tactics, okay? So again, don't feel bad if you will break even. That's a really good sign, okay? So now the next thing is your qualified lead percentage. This is good because this is if you know if the marketing is working by your cost per your click-through rate, I'm sorry, and your qualified percentage. So depending how many links you're sending out, this will quantify itself, will calculate itself out. And if you're averaging at least a 10% plus, that means the ads are good, that everything is golden. So keep cranking it up, okay? So that's one. The other one is show up rate. This is extremely important because if you're booking a bunch of calls and nobody's showing up, then we're doomed. You get me? Because we're not gonna make any money if nobody's showing up. I put 75%. This honestly on the low end. You should be around 85, 95. Hey, we have a 95% show up rate. Some month we even have a 98% show up rate. So you should have a very high show up rate, especially if you use all the tools that we help you build in the infrastructure. You should have a lot of reminders and pretty much systems to have people to show up. But that should be at the lowest end, 75%. Now the next one is your closing rate. This is also one of the most important metrics because if we're sending you a bunch of traffic, we're booking a bunch of calls, right? Everything's golden and you're not actually getting the closes, then we're doomed. I see a bunch of you guys hover around the 15 to 18% closing rate, which again, my first month, it's all good. My first month, I was actually at I think 18. I made a whole video about this, how I went from 18% to all over 70% closing rate in 4 or 5 months. But it is okay if you're just starting off and you're lower than 20%. It's okay, but expect not to be profitable that month or expect just to break even because you're not closing enough people. If you get 10 people and you're barely at a 10 or 15% closing rate, that means you're closing barely 1, maybe 2 out of 10 clients. You get me? So you're not gonna be very profitable if you do that. But if your closing percentage is 30%, you're golden. You get me? If you want to be profitable, cost per DM, $10. Click-through rate, 1%. Cost per book call, 200. Cost to acquire a client, max $1,000. Show up rate, at least 75% plus. Qualified lead, 10%. 30% closing rate. And there will be no way that you won't be profitable. There will be no way. Sometimes people tell me, hey, what's your guaranteed? I'm like, you want a guaranteed? If you have this metrics for me, then I'll guarantee you all your money back. And this is the only way I could guarantee you all your money back if you hit this metric. Because if I know if you hit this metrics, it will be impossible for you not to make money. So that's why you got to follow your metrics and know your key performing indicator because you know if you're falling off or not, okay? So you got to be on top of it. You got to be on top of it. So closing rate, right? Now the next one is your DM to close percentage. This is also very important because we want to know how many people are coming from the DMs and how many people are getting closed. Okay, so it should be at least 1 to 3%. So this is pretty much out of 100 people who DM me, how many people are actually becoming a client. As low as we go from 1%, as high we've been as 3%. Okay, so it goes up and down. Let me kind of show you a little bit how those metrics look like on my end. So let me zoom in a little bit. Let's go into a different month. Well, I can just show you May right now. So May average cost, but again, this is my metrics. I charge way higher tickets, so my metrics are a little bit um, um, higher, but it's okay. Um, my average cost per message is what I was telling you about. This for you should be like anywhere between $5 to max $20. You lead to book call percentage. Right now we're trying a bunch of new ads, so it's very low, but you should be at least at a 10%. If I go to my yearly, it should tell you. Where's my yearly here? Uh, oh, it's actually 5%, but again, we've been trying a lot. If I go back, let me go to a different year. Let's go to 2023. If you go to 2023, then it should be. Actually, it's not showing here. I don't know what's going on, but it's usually over 10%. Um, I don't know, maybe some of the data of the tracker is being skewed, but that needs to be over 10%. Your show up rate, it should be, like I said, at least a 75%. We have a 7% no show, so we're over 90%. We're at 93% show up rate. So this needs to be very high. Okay. Um, your closing rate, this should be like mine is very high. This is actually my own metrics for me personally, not my team's. So I close very high. Again, I am the founder and I know the most data about this company, so it's very easy to close for me. If you're just starting off and you're the CEO and you're the founder, you're probably in the same position that I am. We're usually gonna have a way higher closing rate because we're the CEOs of the company. We're the one all over the videos and the ads and X, Y, and Z. So it's easier for us to close. But this month I'm averaging a 75% closing rate. Now, my cost to acquire clients, again, this is my numbers. Yours should be at least $500 to $1,000. Shouldn't be no more than this. Um, and that's pretty much it that I wanted to show you from metrics point of view. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. So DM to close at least 1 to 3%. Closing rate at least a 30%. Show up rate at least a 75%. Qualified lead percentage 10% plus. Average cash on hand at least $2,000 or more. 1,500 would be the minimum. Cost to acquire a client 300 the lowest, 1,000 the highest. Cost per book call $50 the lowest, 400 the highest. Click through rate anything above 1%, you're golden. Cost per result on the DM is at least $2.50, max $25. Okay, that's it for this video, everyone. So if you have any questions about this certain metrics, you can always ask me on the weekly calls. Jump on the weekly calls, show me your tracker, be like, hey, Javi, my data is all messed up. How do I move forward? And honestly, this is how I fix your business. In this 4 months that you're gonna spend with us, this how every time hey Javi, what's going on? What's wrong? I'm literally gonna be like, let's look at your KPIs. Because if I know one of these metrics is off, I know that what's going on in your business. This is why it's so important to track because we're not guessing what's going on. It's literally I'm looking at your tracker and I know exactly what's happening and how to move forward, right? So that's it with this video, everyone. I hope you got a lot of value out of it.